But first, Hurricane Harvey hit Texas last summer with 130-mile-per-hour winds and torrential downpours, forcing scores of people from their homes. 5 months later, more than 33,000 are still displaced and living in temporary federal emergency housing. Hari Srinivasan recently traveled to Houston for a series of stories about what things are like after the storms. We start with a look at what's still keeping people from returning home. This story was produced in partnership with the Texas Tribune, a nonprofit news organization.
This hotel room is what Jackie White and her husband Michael have been staying in for the past month. They moved here from another hotel, and for 3 months before that, slept on their daughter's floor, which, given Jackie's arthritis, was not easy.
This is more than enough for anybody to worry with and stress with.
Their ordeal began in August when Hurricane Harvey swept into Houston, then stopped and dumped more than 50 inches of rain on the city. At its peak, about a third of the county was underwater. At least 30,000 of the city's homes were flooded. White's was one of them.
My daughter came, she and my son-in-law, they rescued us out of the house because we couldn't get out.
Days later, White returned to find her home in shambles.
This is what I have here.
White had worked for an insurance company, but she did not have flood insurance. She says, as a retiree, she just could not afford it.
I had everything I needed except flood. No flood insurance.
80% of Hurricane Harvey victims did not have flood insurance, like Jackie White. She was not required to because her home is not in what the Federal Emergency Management Agency considers a floodplain, an area likely to flood. But FEMA has provided White money to replace furniture, make basic repairs to her home and one of her cars, and for temporary shelter.
In the city of Houston, there are about 4,300 people that are still in hotels. At some point, that's going to end. So housing becomes a critical concern.
Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner.
In large part, we're still waiting on funding to come from the federal level to the state and then down to the local level.
Is that frustrating?
Yeah, it's frustrating because, we all have to move with a degree of urgency. People need housing. That's my number one priority.
My brother is still living in a trailer in his driveway after having 4, 5, 6 feet of water in his house for 12 days.
Republican Congressman John Culberson represents Houston and says he understands the needs his constituents are facing.
It's a catastrophe, whether it be private insurance is taking forever, mortgage companies won't release checks, or FEMA, or the federal government, not moving fast enough. It's intensely frustrating for my constituents and top of my list every day, all day.
Still, he says, getting money and resources to people who need them takes time.
You have to have an accurate count, how much property was damaged and how much money then is going to be necessary based on that count.
More money is in the pipeline. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has set aside $5 billion to repair homes and businesses damaged by Harvey. Houston is likely to get about half of that. The U.S. House of Representatives also passed an $81 billion disaster aid bill in December. Assuming the Senate passes that measure, Houston will get a portion of that as well, along with Florida and Puerto Rico. But for White, the help is not coming fast enough.
I'm struggling because I can't get the assistance I need from FEMA. And they are not coming across with the help that I was expecting them to give us.
We have to manage their expectations of what the federal government can do, what the state government can do, and what the local government can do.
Kevin Hannes is FEMA's point person for Harvey recovery efforts. He says there are about 365,000 people registered with FEMA, and so far, the agency has distributed $1.5 billion in grants, not including insurance payments or loans.
It's an average grant of about $4,000. Now, many have received more, some have received less, but it's really that seed money to get started with their recovery.
People lost everything. Look over here to your left.
Jackie White is trying to get her life back to normal, but it is not easy. She has regular doctor's appointments for herself, her diabetic husband, and her brother who's partially paralyzed. Now, there's an added commute between her hotel and her damaged home. In this sprawling metropolis, the car is king, but hers was soaked in 3 feet of water. It still smells of mold.
Reach out and touch.
I'm into it.
She does have some hope from a local nonprofit, West Street Recovery. The group formed during Hurricane Harvey when Andrew Cobb and 2 of his friends set out by boat to begin rescuing flooded neighbors.
And then from there, we became a food distribution hub and a cleanup distribution hub. And then we've just kind of followed the stages of the disaster recovery group or process.
Today, Cobb and his volunteers are finishing the drywall in what was once Jackie White's kitchen. His group is trying to get 3 rooms ready so she can move in as soon as possible. The rest of the house will be fixed up later on when Jackie can afford the repairs.
The best strategy we've come up with so far is to what we call unstick people. So if they just need money to help pour a concrete foundation, or if they need materials for siding, or if they need us to hang 3 rooms of drywall, then we try to pick off those smaller projects.
This neighborhood in Northeast Houston was hit particularly hard during the storm. Becky Sell is working a few houses down.
The entire front of the house had fallen off of the foundation, as well as part of the back of the house. And there's a lot of wood that was damaged, and no floors. The electricity was damaged. This is pretty typical.
Deanna Adams is Jackie's case manager from West Street Recovery. They're working with about 180 clients.
The neighborhood that we focus on Northeast Houston is because it's historically been underserved. So historically, I mean, as you can see here, there's not been a lot of cleaning of the drainage or maintenance of the drainage, maintenance of the homes. In some cases has been difficult because of, financial issues with the residents.
A flood doesn't care if you're rich or poor, but it seems that you're saying that people who are already poor are getting doubly hurt in the recovery.
Honestly, I'd beg to differ. A flood does care if you're rich or poor, because if you live in certain areas that are more flood prone and there hasn't been zoning to say that either you can't live in those areas, or if you do, we're going to make sure that your house is up to a code where it won't be devastated, that absolutely makes a difference.
As for White, she knows the clock is running out on her hotel stay. After extending the deadline several times, Hannah says FEMA will continue its temporary hotel housing program at least until March, but
transitioning that program becomes very difficult the longer it goes on. And so I know from a state perspective as well as a federal perspective, we want to try to end that program as soon as possible.
That's fine with White. She wants to move back into her house as soon as she can, but with great hesitation. This isn't the first time she's lost everything to a flood. In 2001, Tropical Storm Allison flooded this same home.
Why move back here if it could flood again?
I have no place to go. This is all I have to call home. I don't have anywhere else to go.
There's an inherent tension in the recovery process after Harvey. On the one hand, you want to get people back into their homes as quickly as possible so they can get back to their lives. On the other hand, what if the home you're sending them back to is likely to flood again? In our next report, we'll take a look at what's causing this flooding and what's being done about it. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Hari Srinivasan in Houston.
Online, another smaller tourist town in Texas was hit hard by Hurricane Harvey. Now it's trying to make a comeback. You can read that at pbs.org/newshour.